So we have our panelists with us for 30 minutes, and we're going to have an open round of questions and comments if they're brief. So I think that we should open up first to just intra-panel questions and comments. I thought that even the histories that we were discussing with Mr. Ramaswamy's account of the early history of tribunals and Arun's account, there were some internal tensions and so on. Or you could even elaborate. But I'll first just invite the panel, if they have any questions or comments to each other, that might be a good place to start. Anything that you wanted to say, but you didn't have the time to say, or any of that. There are 3 mics that you can just use. And if you any concluding thoughts. If not, I'll go back to the audience. Shall we do that? Okay. So I think in the audience we have very different groups of people. We have people who are academics and researchers. We have tribunal members from various states, as well as some students. So I'm just going to request you to get a mic. There are friends all over on the sides of the hall. Get a mic, introduce yourself very briefly, and please ask a question or a brief comment that would give the panel a chance to respond. Yes, Ken. And just raise your hands in case we don't spot you. See, very quiet audience. Yeah, so Jaina to start off. Yeah.
I'm Jaina Kothari. I'm a lawyer practicing in the Karnataka High Court and also part of the Center for Law and Policy Research. One issue that struck me that both Mr. Nanaya and Mr. Ramaswamy spoke about is about people who are appointed as judges. And you mentioned, and we know that you either have people who are appointed later as post-retirement postings. That is one issue, but the other issue which I had in mind and which I wanted to get your thoughts is judges who are appointed earlier on in their careers. What happens is that many judges from tribunals or other special courts are not considered for elevation to the High Court, and that is the practice because I think even the Supreme Court has held that, for example, in the case of family courts, like special courts like family courts, judges are not considered to be equal to district level judges, and so they are not considered for elevation. So I think what would also happen, you know, when you said that you don't have judges who are interested in these issues and therefore they don't take an active role and therefore the kind of, the way the tribunal function suffers. Don't you think that that is an important issue unless judges, or if we want to treat tribunals equal to other courts, then judges who are appointed there at least earlier on should be considered for elevation. Otherwise, why will they take their job seriously?
Yeah, the mics are in front of you.
Hello? Yeah. Well, it is a question. Now the question is, elevation question is exclusively in the prerogative of the 3 judges, 1, 2, 3, Chief Justice and the other 2 judges. See, the entire records of their records means not the personal records, the judicial records will be viewed. Then ultimately they will recommend where the subordinate courts, that is district judges and below, they have been recorded. So thereby that control is exclusively with them, and that will be sent to through the government, will be sent to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ultimately the judges who have served in Karnataka will verify, then recommend to the Chief Justice, forwards it to the Law Ministry, and through that it goes to the Prime Minister and to the President of India and passes through. Why they are not elevated is a question. It is their prerogative. It cannot be questioned otherwise anywhere else. Perhaps is it clear, or you want me to
what my question was is that the Supreme Court has actually laid down in a judgment that judges from other courts, like the family court and other tribunals, are not at par as district court judges. So only district court judges could be elevated, so they will not even be considered for elevation, apart from other issues. That is what I tried to raise.
That is the prerogative of the High Court. Now we cannot comment on that straight away. It's a prerogative of the High Court. As I said,
So-
3 judges. There is a judges, now for instance, in a senior judge is appointed as a administrative judge for the to Bangalore. Every district will have an administrative judge, and their work is progress, and the reports are being made to the Chief Justice, and this is how it goes on. Why that has been not done, I will not be able to help, because I said it is only the judges 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, Mr. Ramaswamy?
See, what we should do in this seminar is, 2 things are there. Once you want to appoint a judge to the High Court, there are 2 streams. One is from the bar, and one are those who are already district session judges from seniority onwards, and their confidential reports are perused, and then the further process takes place. So as far as the district session judges are concerned, their seniority, their confidential reports, by and large the system is in place. There's nothing much to be done in it, of course, unless somebody's got a bad CR or something like that. But by and large the seniority is respected, and things are going on through practice. I've seen those records. That's why I can tell you with some amount of confidence. What I'm saying is that the other stream, today you are a very good advocate. See, previously what used to happen was that if you was a leading advocate, the Chief Justice would send for that advocate and say that, brother, please come and sit on the bench with me. It required a lot of persuasion for that person to agree. And the classic case is of Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer. Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer was to be elevated as a judge of the Madras High Court. He was asked repeatedly by the then Chief Justice, he refused. Then the governor of Madras, he asked, he was Sir so-and-so somebody, he asked him, he said no. But they were very keen that he should come. And then it so happened that the Viceroy from Delhi had come to Ooty, and then they thought that if they bring Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer to Ooty, and the Viceroy said he will be able to convince him. So Sir C.P. was requested to come to Ooty, and he came. So when the Viceroy asked him, he said, tell me, why are you refusing to become a judge? So he looked at the Viceroy and said, sir, it is better to talk nonsense for half an hour and get away than rather than listening to nonsense day in and day out. So that's why I don't want to become a judge. So it was not so. That was the situation. But the problem arose when jockeying started. I want to become a judge. I want to become a judge of the High Court. That is where the problem started, which was not there in the 50s and early 60s. It's only in the 70s these things started, when the concept of committed judiciary, etc. happened. What I am saying for this seminar to recommend, if in your wisdom, is that when you are taking the advocates, the learned advocates to judiciary, don't appoint them straight to the High Court. Appoint them first to the tribunals, and from the tribunals, from smaller tribunals and then major tribunals, from the tribunal, then elevate them to the High Court. Then the tribunals will also function well, and he will have interest in it. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. So we can go back.
One question to Thiruvangadam.
If you can please introduce yourself.
Questions to Mr. Thiruvangadam. I am M.B. Nargun, senior advocate from Bangalore. My friend, while referring to the tribunals between the 1975 to 77, the emergency period, he thought that it is something like an illegitimate check. Basically, the courts in India, more so the Chief Justice of India then, in the year 1980, Chief Justice Chandrachud has cried for the tribunals. I'm using the word, he has cried for the tribunals in 2 judgments in the 1980, 3 Supreme Court page number 1 and 1980, 4 Supreme Court page number 1, Hiranath's case and Kashinath's case. Therefore, the constitution of a tribunal is not at the instance of Madam Gandhi, it was at the instance of the judiciary, number one. Number two, in the absence of the tribunal, the courts in India would have been collapsed. Therefore, the necessity of a tribunal is a must for Indian context. In this context, you can kindly contribute your idea.
Yeah. Arun?
Sorry, I don't disagree. I ended by saying that I think today tribunals are necessary. But my point was to say that, and I'm an academic, all of us are concerned about solutions. But my own point is that rather than trying to find solution X, Y, and Z, it's more important to try and understand why certain mentalities persist and which come in the way of that. So just to respond to Mr. Ramaswamy's last point, I think it's a very good point. Structurally, I think it'll do a lot of good. But you have to recognize that there is a mindset, even amongst judges like Justice Chandrachud, that there is a way in which you become a good judge. And if you instead of taking a leading lawyer from the bar, I take somebody who's practicing in a tribunal, which for most judges in the high courts is outside of their purview. They don't see that happening on a daily basis. They have no way of assessing how this person will work. So I take your point that structural point may well be a way to go forward. But any solution that you come up with must be compatible with how mindsets exist both in the minds of people who make those decisions and the minds of people who are subjecting themselves to that process. So I take your point about Kedarnath, but, and that's what my point about the Sampath Kumar case as well was. Not just Justice Chandrachud, Justice Bhagwati, when he's sitting there, if you see the interim order in the Sampath Kumar case, he says there is a constitutional challenge to this provision, and Justice Bhagwati would know. He was part of many of these early cases where the Supreme Court, in a line of cases from Kesavananda, said judicial review is part of basic structure. But what he was trying to do, I mean, it's not that he was not aware of that, he was trying to work around it to come up with this idea that tribunals could be alternative judicial institutions. That theory held sway not just from 76 onwards till 1997. Right? So that's the period that I was talking about where that was thought that this could be done. But in the 90s, again, it's not just because of some principled opposition. You have to remember also the context by the early 90s when the problems with tribunals had started coming. So if you see the 1993-95 decision in R.K. Jain, this was from the SEGAT. And a lot of these tribunals had started reporting the kind of problems that today we see everywhere. Problems of finding members, stories about corruption growing, a lot of things had also. So when in 1997, when they come up with this principled revision of Sampath Kumar, they're also responding to things like the Malimat Committee report which had come out and talked about the administration of justice problems in these tribunals. So I don't disagree, sir. I take your point that we need tribunals absolutely. My point of going back to that history and mining it a little bit and trying to make sense of how can the court in 1987 say tribunals are perfectly okay, and just 12 years later find a constitutional problem with 323A and the way it excludes judicial review, right? So it's just trying to mine that to figure out what was going on, not just in the doctrinal law, but also in the practical working of these tribunals, which by that time had been there for some time.
So just as a reminder, the title of the panel is History and Purpose of Tribunals. So what we're trying to work at is not necessarily the detailed plans for staffing, which are important, but we have other panels that focus on some institutional and policy reform questions. What we're trying to focus on in this panel is to just figure out how is it that we thought, what do we think tribunals are a solution to? And what is the history of that evolution? That's the kind of issue that we're trying to target. But back, yes, please. I'll just come. I think we can take maybe 3 or 4 more questions so we have time. Please.
I am S.S. Garak. I'm a member Judicial Customs and Excise Service Tax Appellate Tribunal. I just want to share 1 or 2 experience. I have been heading the tribunal for the last 7 years. Earlier, I was heading Railway Claims Tribunal for 5 years. Now I am heading this tribunal. The difficulties which I have seen in the tribunal, as was talked about in the morning also, that the government is not giving that priority to the tribunal, having said that it is must, it is helping the judicial system also, and its disposal is also excellent. But the government is not appointing the members. See, I am in Karnataka. I have a jurisdiction over entire Karnataka and Kerala. It's only one tribunal, and I have a pendency of 10,500 cases, appeal cases, and crores and crores of rupees of the government is struck up. But I am alone. I don't have the technical member. And this is happening, all over the country, we are working on 50% strength. It is not only in the custom center exercise, even in the CAT also, it's a 50%. So the government, you know what has happened? The government, the courts, the Supreme Court appointed the members, the judicial member, they appointed 5 judicial members, then the government rejected them subsequently. So ultimately, and that happened last year. Thereafter, no memories, because the Supreme Court is now unwired, that they say, once what we have appointed, you have not appointed, what we have selected, you have not appointed, so we will not appoint you anymore. So that is a difficulty of the government, and then see the infrastructure. See, having realized the importance of the tribunal, the government is not providing that infrastructure, that staff and all those things. So therefore, the government, of course, realizes the importance of it. Still, government is not, ready to allocate that budget and that staff and then appointment of members. What I will do alone, I can only handle cases up to 50 lakh. We have a cases involving 200 crores, 500 crores. What to do with those cases? They are lying for the last 10 years, 15 years.
Thank you.
So that is my observation. Thank you.
I'll take two more comments or questions before John.
So I'm John Benedict from e-governance department. I work on all these e-courts and case war system and all these things, sir. Going forward, on the other side, from the High Court, District Court, the Session Courts, and to the lowest level, and on the other side, this Tahsildar, AC, DC. So we have been trying to understand how to streamline these things through a process re-engineering, all these things. So I like to listen from Ramasamy sir, when the policies were made, when you go back to the history of tribunals and all these things. So when you thought of these tribunals, did you also consider that, at the lowest level, the discipline they follow, the process, the procedure. If you take the district court or the session court, we found that there is a set of timelines. The procedure they follow, it's all heard on time. And the other side, the load which comes to the High Court, we work on this. Even for the High Court, we have been working on some integrated court management system. When you see the other side of it, the quasi-judiciary part of it, and when it reaches the tribunal and it reaches the High Court, there is a lot of difference. So whether through a policy level, whether there was any policy being made earlier to streamline that, to make it more disciplined, like this district court, sessions court, or at the execution level, was it a failure? I'd like to listen from you on that.
Sure.
See, as far as the revenue courts were concerned, of the assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, divisional commissioner, etc., even prior to independence and even after independence, till about 1980 or so, when the senior officers came to the districts or division, this was a very important item of work, whether the court cases were being handled, whether days were fixed. In fact, when we joined the service, our divisional commissioner called us and said that you must fix Mondays and Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. as the court days. And if you did not hold the court at the end of the month, we are supposed to write a diary and send it to the deputy commissioner and divisional commissioner. Deputy commissioner in turn sent it to the divisional commissioner. Divisional commissioner's diary was reviewed by the revenue commissioner. There was a system, there was a hierarchy that was operating. But as I told you, government works in very mysterious ways. For some reason, for example, in Karnataka, we did away with the post of the divisional commissioner. And it was for a very silly reason. I did not first believe it. But then when I went deeper into it, one of the important members of the public, who later on became an MLA minister and became a chief minister, he had taken a vow that if by God's grace one day he becomes the chief minister, he is going to abolish the post of the divisional commissioner. Why? Because one of the divisional commissioners had made him wait for 1 hour. And he did it. Now, once that proposal, I was not here, I was that time working in the central government, once that proposal was made and was accepted in the cabinet, nobody put forward strongly that there is a gap. You see, the appeals of the deputy commissioner were being heard by the divisional commissioner. Now what will happen? Nobody said this. And then it was merry, and if my work is not being supervised, I'll feel very happy. So the large number of our colleagues told, you have done a very nice thing, sir. These divisional commissioners were always a pain in the neck, the collector said. So much so that we had quite a big gap, even now, where the collector's work is not being supervised. Now we have a regional, people called regional commissioners. Only the nomenclature has changed. But point was, earlier, the divisional commissioner was a selected person. The chief minister and the chief secretary put their heads together to appoint a person as a divisional commissioner. Now regional commissioner is a god for nothing. You know, if you can't find, he's very uncomfortable, not a good fellow in their eyes. So post him as regional commissioner. And nobody is bothered. So now the supervision which was going on, that has suffered very badly. But that's one thing. The other thing, that is as far as Karnataka is concerned. Now the point was that in some of the states we had Board of Revenue. Now the chairman Board of Revenue was a person, was a officer senior to the chief secretary. That was the position given. And in the Board of Revenue, work relating to commercial taxes or sales tax, work relating to administration, they were called board members. They heard, passed good quasi-judicial orders, and by and large the High Court was quite happy with it. So for example, you take the case of Rajasthan. They did away with divisional commissioner, they did away with Board of Revenue. Then they brought in the Board of Revenue, then they brought in the divisional commissioners. But this is a big gap. You see, in this gap of 8 or 10 years, cases accumulate, and human tendency is to learn wrong things faster rather than learn good things. And once the supervision is lost, it becomes a problem. And you see, this hierarchy was disturbed. Both were partners to this. For example, I'll tell you in the case of Karnataka. After all, this is a pyramid. The person only one person can reach the top. That is the post of chief secretary. So what was the system that was devised? That the chief minister will go thoroughly and appoint divisional commissioners to the divisions. From these efficient divisional commissioners, 2 persons would be picked up as development commissioners and revenue commissioner. Between the revenue commissioner and development commissioner, one would become chief secretary. So if you are not a divisional commissioner, there is no question of your becoming a chief secretary at all. So at every stage, you had to put in your best. Once you did away with this system, this is where we have to assert ourselves and educate our political masters. And don't disturb the hierarchy of the postings. That is another thing. Now, for example, I'll give you a concrete example. The chairman of the Bangalore Water Supply and Drainage Board was a person equivalent to the chief secretary's rank when we joined the service. If he could not become a chief secretary, he became chairman of BWSSB. Overnight, it was changed. A person with 10 years of service is also one day chairman, a person with 25 years is also chairman, a person about to retire is also becoming a chairman. So the whole, you have disturbed this hierarchy. Once you disturb the hierarchy in the administration, you are in trouble. Most of this trouble is arising because of this. As I told you, a man like Mr. Y.B. Chauhan, as the Home Minister has said, it's a sad day that we have got in our hand the civil service list in our hand. So I will make the postings. That is the problem which starts. So therefore, all this has happened because of this. Otherwise, the system is functioning, was functioning well.
Let me go back. Yes, please.
Just a minute. I
Yeah.
just want to
Yeah,
say,
Ms. Nandi.
these revenue records, there is a proposal, even I think when Mr. Gundurrao was the chief minister, he wanted to simplify it. This digital was not available. Once the entire revenue records are simplified and bring it to the digital, perhaps most of the cases, perhaps I will be one of the victims also because I will lose cases, it doesn't matter, but people will be in their places, they know what is the property they are holding, what survey number. I have seen several cases where the property has been divided not by meets and bounds. Come before the High Court or the tribunal and we fight, saying that particular survey number, the extent of land, which is some revenue records, you know how these people, the village accountant, the revenue inspectors are man how things and being done. Once it is simplified, perhaps the thing will be much easier and most of the litigation will be put an end to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm a retired officer from Karnataka Appellate Tribunal. There is a day now, it has come, doctor versus judiciary. Doctor versus judiciary. Now, the doctors, they wanted to bring the judiciary officers under the ambit of consumer forum. Doctor versus judges. Judiciary should also come under the CPA, Consumer Protection Act. Everybody must read and share. In the Salman case, hit and run case, the lower court judge and high court judge had the same piece of evidence to deal with. They also had the same Indian law to abide by, and most probably they had similar education qualification also. Yet the interpreted situation in absolutely contrasting manner and gave a verdict which are pole apart.
So we are lucky that we are not dealing with special courts at all. So we're not talking about consumer protection today. So you can rest easy that nothing is going to happen today that makes KAT judicial members responsible.
Just to have a clarification from the boss. You see, judiciary, whether it comes under the Consumer Forum Act or not. That's why we have.
I'm not sure that anyone has any special expertise on the question, but Mr. Nanaya wants to say something just to ease your concern.
See, in more.
Yeah, I think he's got your point. He'll just respond.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now the question is, perhaps the present court buildings, judges are insufficient to deal with the situation. Then the judges has to deal with the consumer forum, leaving the judicial work.
Yeah.
This cannot be done. If you start doing it, see, there is a law laid down for them. The judges also been laid down certain laws. What is to be done? In case you are finding it difficult, there are superior courts are there. Please approach the superior court. Tell them what has happened.
Yeah. So I think we can take one last question. Yes, please. Just if you can get a mic here.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, sorry. There's one at the back and then to you. We'll just do that in turn, one after another. Yes, please.
I am Umesh Mulimani, a judicial member working in KAT, Karnataka. My question is that for any indiscipline by the government and posted to the KAT or tribunals, can we cause injustice to the litigants for our any discrepancy or the infirmity in our promotions or so? Can we?
I'm not sure they've understood your question, but if you'd like to, yeah.
I will try to answer perhaps as I understand. You see, you have a place there, you have been given a place there to deal with the situation. A lot of responsibilities has been given. Deliver your responsibilities. It is not that for reasons which we said that as a punishment has been posted, it's not actually. There is a official position is been given to him to function as a judicial member or judicial officer in the tribunal. So function, you deliver goods there. It is not that challenging that for having sent there, then who is ready to go to the tribunal to man it? So thereby, discharge your duty, function properly. Perhaps one government is there today would have done it for reasons. The other government will definitely not ignore. And your records will be clean and you will be definitely you will be going to be honored. So don't take it as a punishment. This in the casual manner which we have just now made a statement, but that is not actually invariably been done. So thereby, don't get offended being appointed as a member, either administrative member or a judicial member in the tribunal. Kindly discharge your duty wherever it is being given to you.
Okay. Last question before we close. I'm not sure your mic is on.
C.S. Puttaraju.
Yes, a little louder, please.
C.S. Puttaraju.
Yeah.
G.S. Puttaraju,
Please go on.
member retired from KAT, years back. For effective functioning of tribunals and speedy disposal, officers who have been posted, particularly administrative officers who have been posted to KAT, they are not being posted directly to KAT. They are placed at the disposal of Revenue Department. In turn, Revenue Department has to issue separate orders. In the process, what happens is, Revenue Department are not serious about the problems of KAT. They take their own time and they take 2 to 3 months to issue orders. In my case, since I knew Secretary Revenue, I personally went, and for that also it took more than 20 days. In a period of 2 to 3, there are instances where I was holding charge when new officer when officer existing was serving in KAT is retired and new officer was posted. He was placed at the disposal of Revenue Department. Then he has to come all the way from Gulbarga and he waited for 2-3 days. He has not accepted his report. Then he has to run to the Revenue Department, staying in a hotel and all those things. So posting from Revenue Department took 2 to 3 months. In the process, one person has to sit in 2 courts. One problem. At least second thing is, officers who have been posted to KAT have got 1.5 or 2 years. My request to the best body, at least to make a recommendation, whenever an officer is posted or any member is posted to tribunals, at least they should have minimum 5 years of service. Otherwise, every 1 year and 2 years, retiring means, in fact, in 3 years, I was holding charges of 2 courts for continuously. Sitting in the morning one court and sitting in another bench in another court. In the process, there will not be time even to go through the files and pass orders. Many orders posted, we will post for orders and we will not pass orders.
Sure.
Then this will affect ultimately the consumer or the member who comes for tribunal.
Sure. Thank you.
Secondly, sir, so there is one problem.
You'll have to be quick.
Yeah. Then I'm sorry. Then secondly, there is another problem. People will not come to KAT because once the person is posted to KAT, till he gets his order from Revenue Department, he goes and gets influence and he cancels orders. The reason, being an administrative officer telling it, the facilities given in the tribunal, many members may be experiencing. As an assistant registrar, he gets a vehicle, or a deputy secretary gets a vehicle. Whereas an additional registrar or a member, a judicial member, they will not have any facilities in the tribunal. At least, once it so happened, I was traveling in a bus. One person who was appearing before me, he also travels in the bus. And the moment he sees me, he gave me a respect. Sir, please sit down. I was standing and he was sitting and he offered me a seat. All the people in the bus were looking at me. What is this? This man respects him. Then he was asking, why are you giving respect to him? Why are you making namaskara? Sir, no, you stop in the tribunal. So this is what is happening, and many officers looking into this. It may appear very silly, but still it affects the officer. The moment he goes to the political boss and gets transfers and goes to some other post.
I'd like to respond since I won't even ask my panel to respond.
Yeah.
But please, yeah.
Then on last point, last point to Mr. Nana Sahab.
Can I stop your last point and you can share it with him at lunch?
Last one point.
And I think you can share it with him at lunch since it's to him personally. So I looked at your bus example and I thought it's a